If you're struggling to get victory over sin and change your behavior, you probably need to deal with some of the underlying strongholds that are keeping you from walking in the freedom that Jesus has purchased for you. So the question of how does the enemy have access to you and what is he getting, how is he getting these lies into your mind? It can come from a variety of sources. It can come from the music that you listen to, where you are just absorbing these statements that are not true, that are not aligned with God's perspective. That can actually get into you. Music is so powerful, it can actually shift things at a deep level, and that's why when we listen to that, it can actually just go straight into our consciousness. And what we want to do is say, what am I listening to? It could be producing some of these symptoms and getting thinking into me that I don't want. It could be coming from people. Maybe there are people around you that are constantly telling you something that is not true, and they're lying about you, and the way they see you is not in alignment with what God is saying about you. It could be the videos you're watching. Hopefully not this one, but there may be videos that you're watching, just scrolling through social media, just absorbing and receiving all these things, and even over time, maybe that this is seeping into your consciousness to where now you're believing these statements. And especially when we're stressed or we're having a hard time, we'll often go to these things that we know, but actually not because they're right, but because maybe it's just what we've allowed to influence the most. So by auditing these influences, we're identifying where these demonic statements and lies that are coming into our life, that are getting into our conscience, that we're actually beginning to live because we're believing. And what we want to do is to ruthlessly eradicate these things. There may be friends you need to honestly say, hey, I can't have you in my life right now. There's just too much negativity. There may be things that you need to remove from your life, videos you need to stop watching, movies you need to stop watching, music you need to stop listening to. We cannot continue to struggle and suffer in sin and in bondage and then continue to say, yeah, but I want to be entertained by all these things, and oh, they're probably not related, and oh, I can handle it. Well, maybe you can't. Maybe you're struggling with something because of you're allowing access to the enemy to come into your life. So an important key to overcome this is to learn to take every thought captive. That all through the day we're saying, okay, this thought came into my mind. I'm not going to just fellowship with that. I'm not just going to believe that. I'm not just going to walk that out. I'm going to say, okay, how does that line up to what God says? How does that line up to what the Word of God says? So we're taking every thought captive, and we are not allowing it to come in unless it aligns with who God says He is, what He says about the world, what He says about us. And so 2 Corinthians chapter 10, 3-5 says, though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, for we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. And so that's the question. Are you taking every thought captive as you go through the day and saying, if this does not align with what God says, I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to reject it. I'm going to resist it. And again, at what we align with throughout the day, what we're feeding into ourselves is going to affect our ability to walk in truth if we're just constantly inviting lies into our life. So if you're struggling to walk out freedom, if you constantly are getting caught up by the same sin over and over again, I want to encourage you to check out my course called Freedom for the Willing that will walk you through identifying these lies and then where they came from and the voices and the people and the influences, and then dealing with those and repenting for this, the way you've allowed them to, and then leave you with truth that you now can wield to wage war against these dark forces that are after you and trying to take you out.